Hey guys, I'm Harrison. That's Josh, and welcome back to the Awkward Sports Podcast. And Josh, I don't know about you up north, but down where I am, I'm riding out a little bit of rough weather today, so it's pretty good, I would say, for some in-home entertainment.
Well, up here, everything is frozen over. Just
Oh no.
picture good old like picture like SB129 where everything's chrome, yet everything's frozen, and Squidward like falls out of the freezer. That's the ground right now.
Future. Man, I mean, bro, I do not even want to think about Frozen right now. It was like snowing in Atlanta for like 2 days, and my life just kind of shut down. And like I couldn't even play video games because like the power went out.
Nah, man. And I mean, it's funny because you talked about future, right? And like you talked about future, and a lot of things we talk about, it's like the evolution of gaming, the evolution of things like that. I saw a tweet, Harrison. It was like about, the McDonald's movie with Michael Keaton, the founder, and he comes up and he's
Yeah.
just like, he's just buffoon. He's like, he can't believe he got his food already. He's like, this is it. It's right here. Somebody took that and was like, yeah, this is your disc. You can pop it in and play the game. Like, what? I haven't even downloaded it yet. What do you mean? And it's like we look back to like the good old days of gaming and how easy it was to just turn on a console and play a video game. And it kind of it reminds me of like when things were great, especially for Gator sports, particularly Gator basketball, when it was like 2014, Florida was undefeated in conference play. They were the number one overall seed without question. They ended up making it on a run to the Final Four following three straight Elite Eight appearances. You look since then, Harrison, and a lot of, at Florida basketball, it hadn't really been up to the standard under Mike White. They did make an Elite Eight run in his second season, but were never able to recapture that magic. Florida only being in the top five for 1 week of the Mike White tenure, which lasted 7 seasons, or nearly 7 seasons, mind you. Now Todd Golden is in town. And it kind of feels like we're going old school again with Florida basketball. The standard is back. The standard that Billy Donovan set for the basketball program feels like it has returned to Gator Nation. Florida's the number two team in the country. If there's anything that doesn't remind me of 2014, the success does, but the way this team operates is a lot different than that one. This team kind of is like this college feel of like the Golden State Warriors, where they go on these stretches where they're just shooting lights out, but they can run the floor with almost anybody. And Harrison, I mean, they're 20 games above 500. They're the number two team in the country, and they have the largest point differential in the SEC, which has been lauded by many to be not only the toughest conference in college basketball, but also maybe the toughest conference college basketball has ever seen.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly point out before we get into this, you talked about 2014 when making the video game reference. I'm like, I'm sorry, but by then, like that PlayStation 3 was taking like 400 years to boot up. I just
Yeah,
want to
but
point
yeah,
that out
yeah,
now. Like, if you want to talk about the back-to-back championship years, like '06, '07, okay, yeah, that's the
yeah,
Wii era. You still got a PlayStation 2. Like the PS3 is like just coming out. But like,
right.
I just want to like emphasize, like, if we're talking like going back to when you just put a disc in and we're playing, 2014 is so not it.
It's not. It's more like the last time they were good and the last time video games were good. But
That I
like,
can
yeah,
get
in
behind.
terms of the calendar
That was
years,
also
in
the
terms of
last.
the
Well, that was also the last year we had an NCAA game, like for about 10 years. It was 14, right?
yeah, I believe so. And yeah, and now those are back. Hey, hint, hint. Maybe one day we get a college basketball game back. I know I, for one, would love to be playing college basketball on the video game with this Florida team. This team is
That
fun to
would be
watch.
fun, especially with NIL now. You actually get the players. You don't have to like make all these changes to have names and customize them. And players aren't suing because it's clearly they're like that was a thing, by the way. Look it up. But no, like for real, they finally get back into it. Actually, wait, I digress one more time. If you want to pretend like you're running it back with with Gator basketball, go play a Nintendo Switch. That thing turns on instantly, and it's
By
also
the
the
way,
best console of the generation.
I still do have NCAA basketball '07 in like back home, like in case I ever want to boot that thing up because it's got those great teams that you mentioned, the back-to-back champions, and that was, to your point, the heyday of our video game era when you could just turn it on, flip it on. and just start playing. And that's kind of what this Florida team is this year. They just flip that switch and they just go. I mean, I saw in the game against Oklahoma, Harrison. I mean, they started out the first minute and a half or so. It was like they were taking all these bad shots. I'm like, this is unlike this team. And why are they forcing all of these shots? But then they settled in, they flipped that switch, they turned it on, and they got going. And they really left Oklahoma in the dust. A 23-point win there to extend their winning streak to 6 games, or to 5 games rather. And it's interesting I bring that up because they are on a 5 game winning streak. When you get to March and you get into the tournament, to win the national championship, you have to win 6 in a row. And Florida's already won 6 in a row once this year. They've won more than that actually in a row this year. They started out like 13-0. So really, you could divide the increments of 6. They've done it multiple times. So now they have a chance to do it again. And these are encouraging signs you want to see from a basketball team that has a chance to make a run in March. Because in order to win the championship, you got to go on a win streak. So you got to look at teams that are capable of doing that. Florida is one of those teams that has shown that they can do that multiple times over. So you look at the few losses they have, an 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central time tip in Lexington, Kentucky, in Rupp Arena, one of the toughest places to play. They'll lose by 2 possessions. You go to the home game against Missouri. Missouri, by the way, better than their ranking. They're currently
Yeah.
ranked 15th. I think
They
they're a
took
top 10
they
team.
took Florida down to the wire. It was an 83-82 game.
Yep, down to the wire. And you have that 1 point loss there. And then you have the loss on the road to Tennessee where, like, you have to look at all the factors of that game. Tennessee was coming off of back-to-back losses, and they were at home, and they were coming off of a loss to Florida by 30, like, earlier before that, where it was like they needed a win, and they played with this next-level desperation, and were able to do it, and you got to give them credit for that. So those are the 3 losses that Florida has this year. And despite all of those losses, this team has not only won games by bigger margins, but has been able to adapt with even injuries that have affected this team. You talk about Walter Clayton Jr. He missed the Vanderbilt game. They won that game by double digits. Then you go to the Auburn game. They are missing Elijah Martin for that game. They win that game by 9 points. And then the next game, Mississippi State, Alex Condon goes down in the first 30 seconds of the game, so they're without him the whole game, and they win that game by double digits. Meanwhile, all season long, they hadn't had Micah Handlocked, and now he's back and he's playing. And they were doing just fine without him. My biggest takeaway from that is they've not only been able to win games big, they've been able to do it in a variety of different ways. This team is very balanced. You have players coming off the bench like
Stand
Denzel
up
Aberdeen,
mentality.
Denzel Aberdeen and Thomas Houck. There have been many Gator fans clamoring like, Thomas Houck should be 6th man of the year or Denzel Aberdeen should be 6th man of the year. I think realistically, Florida will not get the 6th man of the year because we don't even really know who it is. Is
No,
it
there
Thomas
is no
Houck?
sixth
Is it
man.
Denzel?
It's sometimes there is the 6th man is insert here. I believe it was the Elijah Martin game when his absence. That's when Thomas Howe absolutely came out for this team. Um, One thing we have not mentioned for Micah Handlocked, and I just want to point that out, is even though he is back, he is still eligible for a 5th year in college because he will play fewer than 30% of games. And it's interesting because the redshirt rules, I believe, changed in college basketball recently, but I guess there's still exceptions for injury. So you're that's important because he's around to go on this run with this team, and he's still around after that for another extra year. So it's one of those times where the Gators really do get to have their cake and eat it too. Alex Condon, you have him and Handlockton now. Like, think about that. It's just a lot more depth. The next man up system has been working like wonders. And we're talking about certain opponents they've beaten. And I just want to get into this quickly. I know it's cool that the SEC has expanded it all, but one thing it's really changed. Like, we only get the Gators only get to play Kentucky once. They lost. You don't get to see it like they have with certain teams, like with Tennessee. They've proven they can blow them out. They've shown at times, they will have a tough loss. At least they took advantage of the Auburn game while they can. They can still take advantage of the Alabama game while they can. But one thing I wish for this season was that you got the home and home still for a lot of these opponents so that you could see the examples of, they've been able to handle them twice or they lost early on, but they were able to bounce back later on and go on a run. Clearly, the schedule has been good enough to say that, but it does feel like something is missing. And I guess we might have to wait to find out now in the conference tournament for some of these.
You're right. And I mean, this is the first time in a very long time that Florida hasn't played Kentucky twice in a season. I mean, that's definitely obviously a game that, they lost, and you'd love to see them come to the O Dome on Florida's home floor, see how that would play out. Um, but hey, on the flip side of it, like you said, the conference tournament's coming up, right? And there's a chance that if they do match up again there, you hold that chip on your shoulder and you use that as fuel to go get that next game. So we talk about that. We talk about some of the wins that they've had in key players' absences. They've been able to do it in a number of different ways. Um, and you look at this team, obviously, right now, they're currently the fourth overall one seed on the one line on Lunardi's projection. Obviously, the AP poll has them at number two. There's is still, you have two more games here in this month of February on the road. You have at LSU next, and then followed by Georgia, Mike White being over there. And again, you just look at, again, this is year three for Todd Golden, what he's been able to do in such a quick period of time, right? We talk about, you know, being patient with certain coaches, and we can talk about all that for all these different types of coaches and stuff, but Golden's ahead of schedule, and he's somebody who's done a stellar job putting together this roster. Speaking of guys that we mentioned earlier, Thomas Houck and Denzel Aberdeen, especially guys that are coming off the bench. Denzel Aberdeen had his coming out game in the SEC tournament last year against Texas A&M. Florida was down to Buzz Williams' squad, and they were down by double digits, and they just looked overmatched. And again, last season's Florida team was a decent team. It wasn't a team that came in with a ton of expectations because the year before they missed the tournament. And they're down double digits to A&M, and Denzel Aberdeen comes off the bench and brings this team back. And it's like, if you have players like that, those are the players that help you win games in March. He very well could have up and transferred after this season, knowing that Walter Clayton was returning, knowing that they brought in Elijah Martin from FAU, knowing that Will Richard was returning as well. So you have those three guards that are all coming back. You're probably looking at it as, I got to do what's best for me. I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of playing time. He decided to come back, and this team is all the better for it. That just shows you like how much like the brotherhood is between all the teammates of this team. They're hanging out off the court. That makes a huge difference, and I think it's going to be a key component in something that is the game changing element off the court down the stretch. You saw it with the 06-07 championship team. Those guys wanted to do everything together, and they ended up doing a lot of special things and accomplishing the highest achievement that you can in the sport, winning a national championship and then doing it again. This team has a little bit of that in them. And again, this is a very well-balanced team. There isn't really a player that comes into the game where I watch Harrison and I'm like, why is this player getting minutes? He's dragging this team down. Everyone brings something to the table, and it just seems like a seamless, well-oiled machine.
Absolutely. And you can see the difference in teams when it's like a cohesive unit, not just like obviously winning teams have star players, but they're more than just individual guys plugged in to just go and score points. When they're a brotherhood, when you can tell these guys hang out off the court, there's something more to it. They're there for each other. They try a little bit harder. And you do see those differences. Like when it's just a couple good guys just who happen to be on the same team together, yeah, like they're gonna have a good record and they'll probably win a couple of tournament games because they're just talented enough, but they're never the teams that go the distance. One sign that this is a team that can go the distance is they are more than just individual player. They are more than just Gator players. They are a team on and off. And it makes you wonder too. And I just wanted to throw this out here because I was looking at the standings and I had to ask, knowing Florida's stretch and Auburn's stretch and Alabama. Let's say Florida soon enough, they beat Alabama at least once. Auburn has to play Ole Miss ranked Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Alabama. Arkansas is potentially a trap game because you never count out a team that's coached by Calipari. And could Florida at a game and a half back still take the regular season championship?
I think they can control their own destiny when it comes to being the number one overall seed in the tournament. Obviously, they don't control their own destiny in the regard of being the top regular season record in the SEC because of the three conference losses, whereas Auburn only has the one. So seeing them having to lose two more with their schedule, I don't know if I see
It'd be
that as
tough.
much for them. But Bama, on the other hand, that is a like if I'm not gonna lie, like Bama's had a fantastic season, but now Bama is getting into the brunt of their regular season schedule. Like
So is Auburn.
almost every team that they play is a highly ranked opponent. You go on the road to Missouri, which I've already said, better than their ranking. They have them at 15. I think they're a top 10 team. They still have to play Auburn at Auburn. They couldn't beat Auburn at home. They have to play Florida. Now, they do get Florida at home. But remember, the last time Alabama and Florida met, which was last season, and again, Florida, the last two times they played Bama, not only beat them, but beat the brakes off of them. Now, with that being said, the first time they met was there in Tuscaloosa, and Bama did win that game in overtime. But that was last year. So, this year is a different team for Bama and a different team for Florida. So that's another tough opponent. I think you said Texas. I think they do play Texas A&M as well. Alabama does down the stretch of this season. And do they play Tennessee down the stretch of this season?
Did Alabama play Tennessee down the stretch? That's a great question. I know Florida and Auburn both play Texas A&M, and I know both have played Tennessee. Alabama down the stretch does play Tennessee March 1st, 4 days before they play Florida, and then they'll play Auburn again.
See, so you have that too, and it's like Alabama's in the like
Alabama has
still.
the toughest schedule left to go. It's only ranked opponents the whole way. And then you have Florida where it's like, LSU is not ranked, Georgia's not ranked, Georgia's been ranked. But then you have top 10 Aggies, Crimson Tide, and then ranked Ole Miss. Auburn has Ole Miss, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Alabama, but they also have Arkansas Wednesday. Then they have another rivalry game against Georgia. That's not going to be easy because Georgia took them to the wire last time.
Yeah, and I
I
think
think
you
I
look at
think
it,
the SEC regular season championship is up in the air.
it very well could be. I mean, like you said, because the conference is really strong top to bottom, right? So like, there's no freebie wins. Like now, Florida's had some nice wins recently at home. Now they have to go back on the road, and yes, LSU and Georgia are unranked currently, and obviously the last time Florida played Georgia, they destroyed them. But Florida was at home. Now they got to go there, and that place, Stegman Coliseum, where the Dogs play, has been hard to win. I mean, they beat Kentucky in there. Florida didn't beat Kentucky this year, so I mean, Georgia's had teams. Obviously, Mike White, he's still got that chip on his shoulder from no longer coaching the Gators. He's still looking for his first win against the Gators since he's taken over as the Georgia head coach. So there's that as well. So I mean, you even look at a team like South Carolina that Florida has played twice. They had to earn that one in when they went to South Carolina on the
Oh
road. They
yeah,
won
they
that
had
on
to
a
come back.
game-winning shot.
They had
So
to
it
come
was
back.
like so it was one of those things. They had to win that, earn that on a game-winning shot against a team that is still searching for their first conference win. That's just how tough the league is. So yeah, there's no freebies in this conference. We've obviously hit on that before. But again, we've seen what this team has been capable of. Obviously, I was very excited to see what this team was going to look like this offseason with a lot of the returning players and what they were able to add in the transfer portal with guys like Ruben Shinyulu from Washington State and Sam Alexis from Chattanooga, who we're also waiting for him to return full strength. This Florida team, Alex Condon and Alexis are the two players that are out right now. But the latest report from Todd Golden himself was that they would be back 10 to 14 days, which was a couple days ago, which when I did the math, it lined up for the first game in March, I believe is A&M. Um, we'll see if they're available for that game, but it seems like they will be ready to go before the conference tournament begins in March. So that's encouraging for the Gators. It's about staying healthy at this point. bringing those two players back. You go into March then with a fully healthy roster and a team that's been able to show that not only they've been able to beat some of the best teams, two AP number ones this season, but to consistently win games in the toughest conference in college basketball. They've answered every question for me in the regular season. Now it's about, now that when the chips are down, can they continue to win these games when it's do or die? And when you have to go on a win streak, can you do it? And it'll be really fascinating to see what this Florida team is made of. One thing's for sure, I haven't enjoyed Gator basketball like this in a long time. And this team is not just a good team. This team is capable of doing something special.
Yeah, and we'll see how things play out the rest of the way. But until then, I'm Harrison, that's Josh, or for old time's sake, I'm Josh and that's Harrison, because sometimes we just don't know our names. This is the Awkward Sports Podcast, and we will see you next time.